And I'm Elisa Bokeen, and we are two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides of the couch.
Today, I love when our guests react to that. By both sides of the couch, we mean therapists and people coming to therapy.
Right.
So, yes.
Getting more therapists in the field and more Black and Latinx people in therapy. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. So, today we have the lovely, wonderful Quiana Larae.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. How did we meet? Oh, years and years ago. No, it probably been that long now, but I feel like it was. It was a panel discussion for men, and I was moderating it.
Yes.
And you were there. You had all the good questions.
And then I was like, wait. So, hold on.
So we met there, and then I did your podcast, and then we've kind of kept in contact since then.
Yes.
And then I'm pretty sure I was talking to Elisa about you, like, I feel like y'all were like spirit animals or whatever you want to call them. I feel like y'all the same person. And so, that was it.
And then I met you at our event with UC.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Started following, I was like, this woman, who is she? I love her. And he's like, I told you.
Oh, I love that.
And so we've been talking about having you come on for a while because you are just doing so much surrounding just being comfortable in your skin. I feel like is a big part of it, and letting go of things that don't serve you, and all of that. And so we wanted to have you on to just talk about your perspective as far as, you know, we talk about mental health and we talk about therapy, but we also want to bring other perspectives on, like, there are so many options for us for healing and for wellness. And so we want to talk to people that are doing different things in those arenas.
Awesome.
Right? So you are an author.
Yes.
Yes.
And are you still a coach? I know we talked about, like...
Well, yes, I'm moving back into that space.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
moving back to that space. Yeah.
Got it. So tell us a little bit about what you have done, like your trajectory and your career, and what that has led you to be interested in and what you're doing now.
You want to know something interesting? So I started off, I went to college. I got my master's degree preparing to be a therapist.
Oh, okay.
And I was sitting in the class, and I remember, like, they were walking us through, like, what you can and can't do, and I was like, oh, that feels so restrictive.
Yes.
It can be.
Yes. How I felt in that moment, and I felt like there was not a lot of people of color who were in that space. And so I said, well, I'll go ahead and finish, but I'll get my certificate in organizational psychology, and I'll pursue kind of the people side of business. And so
that's needed too.
That's the route that I went in, and I became a consultant, and I began to travel a lot. I was married at the time. My daughter was 2, and I was traveling from Houston to Boston. So my clients were in Boston. I would leave either Sunday or Monday, and I would head to Boston. I'd be there all week, and then my ex-husband and my baby would be here in Houston, and then the weekends where we were really, really busy, or the weeks we were really, really busy, they would come to Boston. And that continued for like a year and a half. And I remember both me and the baby got sick, and so I went home to be with her because my husband had to work at the time. And I was just telling a friend, and her mom was like, why are you traveling like that with this little baby at home? And I was like, you know, I want to, this is the work that I want to do. Can't no baby hold me down.
Right.
I need to live my best life.
I need to live my best life. Sick.
Right.
All of us sick. And so she was like, I think that you should really consider getting something local, doing something as a consultant. And so I took an internal consulting position, and I transitioned into working with leaders and like developing leaders and coaching leaders. And still in that time, coaching was still kind of like, it was still pretty new. I really didn't know a lot about it. But what struck me during that time was there was a conversation that I would have with men, like where stress was happening, where they would have a huge like implementation or some changes would happen in the business. I would sit down with the men and I would say, okay, it seems like you're stressed, like your team is feeling it. What can you do? Oh, I'll go on a golf trip, or I'll go to Vegas with the guys for a weekend, and I'll come back and it'll be good.
Okay.
The women,
Pause.
Man, got to figure it out.
Yes.
I remember I was doing an emotional intelligence assessment. We were sitting down with the women, and one of the women, and we were going through, and I was reading her results, and basically her feedback was she was very hard. Like but she felt like she needed to be, because she was on a team with a lot of men, but they were feeling it too. They were like, she's just very like by the book, rigid. And when she saw that feedback, she was like, this is not even me. And she just broke down into tears. Wow. But as soon as she broke down into tears and she saw me see her cry, she like got it together and shut down. And I was like, this is not okay. Yeah. But so around that time, so that kind of struck a chord with me. And around that time, a lot of my friends were also saying, hey, that consulting thing that you're doing, I need some help with my business. Would you mind helping? And we never talked about business. Ever. We talked about like their emotional needs, their spiritual needs, what they needed as women, what they needed as mothers. And so we maybe 5% of the time we talked about business. It really turned into me supporting them as leaders. And so that's kind of where I kind of started to transition. And then I really got into the spiritual space with the work that I do now when I went through my divorce and kind of the healing process that I went through, and I just began to share it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you've been able to share it via your platform, your social media. You've had podcasts, you've written books, and you just recently put out a book, right? What was the name of it?
Oh yeah.
Removing the Blocks.
Removing the Blocks. It's like just a really quick read. It's called Shift, Unleashing Your Inner Light and Removing the Blocks. Yeah.
I got my copy.
Oh,
download it.
Yes. Thank you. I feel like that version has gone through so many iterations. But it was just during this process, I wrote it. Honestly, I was taking notes in my journal, and I just remember feeling like so stuck. Like I just had this conversation. I feel stuck, and then you hear people say that, I feel stuck. I can't move. I feel stuck, and I was like, well, what is it that you want? And I couldn't answer that question. For a really long time, I could not answer that question. I was just like, well, I don't know. Right. And I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. Right. I don't want this. Right. But I couldn't really articulate what it is I wanted. But I don't think there was ever a time where anyone ever asked me, well, what do you want? Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, well, what's next? Well, what, you know what I mean? Right. And so I remember when I was a photographer in college, I would ask people off top, well, how do you want the pictures to feel? And so depending on what they said, I want it to be business, I want to feel sexy, I would set up the shoot depending on how they wanted to feel. So something just flowed to me. I was like, well, how do you want to feel? And I was like, I want to feel free. I just want to be free. Yes. Yes. Freedom. Yes. And that just like,
how do I get there?
Yeah, what are the things that I can do to get me closer to that thing? And I'll just ask that, does this bring me closer to freedom or not? And then I'll just document it to my journal, and then as I heard people say it, or people ask me, well, what has been this process for you, like going through your divorce? How do you get unstuck? I just took what I put in my journal and I documented it for other people. And it was a nice way for me to return to it, because I return to it often. Because I'm in this new season where freedom isn't necessarily my thing. That's not necessarily like the core. Yeah. So I returned to it and I said, okay, well, how do you want to feel now? Like, what do you want that to be like now? And so it's something that I return to as a tool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you use journaling and those things to help you deal with what you were going through at that moment, and then was able to go back to it, and then it was a resource for other people as well. That's smart. I think so many times when we're going through stuff, when whatever process we have, we keep it so private and so close,
especially when we're struggling.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Yes.
But then when people see you come out on the other side, they're like, what did you do?
What did you do? I remember somebody was asking me, well, how's your husband? I was like, we haven't been married for about 3 years.
He's fine. He's fine.
He's great. He's good. But we're not married. And they're like, what? And I was like, I really held that close. Like, I really didn't talk a lot about it. So, yeah, you're right.
Well, and the part that I like what you're talking about, which, Ebony and I have talked about this, kind of how we incorporate it into our work, especially with couples. It's like, well, what is it that you want? What is it that the other person can specifically do to show you that they're invested in this change? Yeah. And a lot of times when you ask people that, they're like, and then the way that shows up in relationships, and when your partner is asking you that, it's like, well, you should know.
Yeah, right.
We've been together.
I'll know when I feel it.
I know when I feel it.
I'll know when I feel it.
Because you don't know. I was telling Ebony, I think I was telling Ebony, sharing this with Ebony, when I went to therapy, I was done. I was ready. I was like, let's check the box.
Yes. Check the box.
Yes.
You should know what I want. Check the
Right.
box.
We've been together long enough.
Yes.
It should not be
If
this
I have to
difficult.
tell you, then it's too much work, or it's not natural, or if you loved me, you would know.
Yeah.
And when you take that position of personal responsibility, not in a punitive way, not in a shaming way, it's what you're talking about. It's like that's the piece that where we're then empowered. And I love what you said. Okay, is this gonna get me closer to freedom? Is this gonna get me closer to my goal?
Yeah.
It just completely shifts the perspective.
Right. Because it is so. What I've learned is I've never really been stuck. I just refuse to make a decision.
Ooh, that's good.
You know what I mean? So it's just like being stuck was
waiting on you,
waiting on somebody else, and thinking something was like outside of me to get to the next thing. It was just me refusing to make a decision.
Oh, you're giving me
And
goosebumps.
so it's just like when I said okay, when I made a decision on what the feeling was that I wanted to pursue, then like I had no excuse. Like when people were asking me questions, it wasn't necessarily, well, I don't know, let me you know, it was okay.
Empowered.
I felt more empowered. Right. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, and I think the struggle a lot of times is like making the right decision versus the wrong decision, and it's neither.
There's no
there's no right or wrong.
It just is. It just
is.
It's the next.
And whatever you
decision.
decide is what's gonna be.
Yeah, and it will always take you to the next thing. Like it's just as long as you're taking like some type of inspired action, even if you find that it was not the result that you wanted, it leads you closer
to
to where you.
Or I thought I wanted that, but wait, look at that. I don't. Maybe I really don't want
really
freedom.
don't want,
maybe I'm not ready for that. Maybe I'm too scared to be free right now because that also requires a certain level of accountability.
Absolutely.
On my part.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. Like what I defined freedom was like it was small things. Like one of the things I said I wanted to do was to pick my daughter up from school at 3:30. Whenever she got out of school, I wanted to be there. She got in the car every day and she was mad. And I was like, I was like, what's that? She was like, nothing, Mom. I said, okay, when you're ready to talk about it, we're talking about it. So by the time Friday came, she gets in the car mad. Like now she's like throwing her body. I said, okay, we're gonna have a discussion at this point because this is not okay.
Use your words.
So use your words, right? I was like, you know, 5, it's 5. Where you at? 5, 4. Where you at? So she was like, I mean, you pick me up at 3:30, right when school is out. I don't have time with my friends. I don't have time to do anything else of it. And I was like, I spent a year of strategy trying to get here at 3:30. And she was like, well, and I was like, I just wanted to be free to. She was like, can you be free to do something else?
That's so true. That's that mommy guilt.
Yeah. I was like, you know what?
You ingrate.
I put all this effort and thought.
This was a year of strategy.
I am here picking you up, showing you I'm involved. Yeah.
Look,
it's so true.
She was like, but you taking away my freedom. I was like, you know what, great. And it just opened up for, you know.
And I was saying, then what did you do?
I ran.
You found other things to do at 3:30. Freedom.
Absolutely.
You still had the freedom. It just wasn't to.
It wasn't what I thought.
It wasn't encroaching on your child's freedom.
Yeah, your point. And I was like, well, I don't. My intention was for us to have great. I don't want to have this time of So
and that guilt of. I'm not here, you know, what you were feeling before with the traveling and this and that. And it's like trying to balance all that. It's kind of what you said as women struggling with that differently than sometimes than men do.
And so your previous jobs, you worked hard. Like you,
you
worked a lot. Clearly that job had you away from your family, but you worked a lot and then you chose to kind of go in a different path.
Yeah.
What gave you the courage to decide, like, I can't continue to do this?
Well, you want to know something, like when my friend's mom, when she was like, look, you know, God bless angels and our ancestors and our elders. Like, she was like, no, ma'am.
Nope.
She was like, no, you are sick, you are traveling, this is ridiculous. She was like, no, ma'am, there's nothing that's worth that. And I was like, oh, okay. And I still kind of was like, you know, this is, you know, this is what I'm doing. She was like, no, I'm gonna get you a role here doing the same thing. And so I won't even say that like I was like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. You know what I mean? And all honesty, like the opportunity came and like it just flowed. I said, okay, I left. It wasn't really a hard decision because that was grueling. Like it seems it felt glamorous at first. Like,
Right.
oh, I'm traveling,
Right.
I'm
Right.
getting points,
Right.
I'm at a hotel. But I work with great clients. All of that was also great,
Right.
but it was just doing a lot to my marriage and to
Sure.
me and my daughter. And so when the opportunity came, it was quite an easy decision to say, okay, instead of traveling and spending all these hours doing this thing, you can do the same thing, less hours here in Houston, which was also an adjustment too, because there was a lot that I felt like, well, you know, did I give up too fast?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Did I give up too soon? Am I really?
Well, and that's what I was thinking when you were describing that. It's just sometimes it's difficult for us to let go because that type of lifestyle is glamorized in that, wow, you're hustling. Right? Look how busy you are. Look how important you are. You're going from city to city, right?
Yeah.
And we glorify busy so often, right? And so for you to then say, and then, oh, you're a mother, you're a wife, and you're a businesswoman, right?
Yeah.
So you
All
get
these
put on this
check marks.
pedestal, and then you're like, wait, this is maybe not what I wanted.
Right. Yeah. None of it.
But that kind of you know, respect that you get for you're doing all that?
Yeah,
You're doing all that? Yeah.
I remember they asked us to do something at church, and I just remember, like, I was like, ugh. Little y'all know, but like a part of me was like, oh yeah, absolutely. This is how I balance it with my husband and my daughter having this great career. And then in the back of my mind, I was like, girl, you are so fake. You're hating every moment of this.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's funny.
So you're right.
When Andonia was on, I said something like, "How do you balance it?" And then she was like, "Balance." And I was like, "Okay, how do you manage it?"
Right.
There's no such thing as balance.
Yeah.
It's either one thing's falling over or other thing. You know. And I used to watch somebody. I can't remember who it is right now, but she used to talk about how, like, there's no point in your life where everything is getting equal amounts.
No.
Like, sometimes you're a great parent, you're putting all that effort in, but then your business is suffering, or your marriage. Sometimes you're being the best wife or spouse or girlfriend or whatever, but then work is suffering. Like, you know, it's just this whole, you just got to manage it. Like, this is what I'm focusing on today, and tomorrow I'll focus on that, as opposed to thinking I could be 100% at all these
everywhere.
different things.
Just saying, I'm doing the best I can today, and this is what's getting my attention today.
This is what gets my attention.
Right.
And I think it's like, I think to your point, it's kind of like we were talking about, like, eating. I know that if I have sugar or coffee at one part of the day, I know I want to include some vegetables or fruit to help to, balance, you know what I mean? Like, to that type of balance where it's not like, okay, I'm trying to do equal amounts of this or equal amounts of that. It's like what feels aligned to me to where I feel like I'm in a good place. And sometimes that means, like, you know what, for dinner I'm gonna have apple pie.
Right.
That's gonna be okay.
Yes.
You know, or it's like, you know, so it just, I think it's just to each person.
Right.
Yeah.
And paying attention to what's happening within you, and then also around.
Oh,
as well.
in your body.
Yeah.
You know, that's my.
She's like,
you know, that's my thing. Yes, get into your body.
Yes.
What is your body telling you?
Yes.
Right. So what has changed since you have made that decision to come here, and like, how has that changed your life and the way that just your daily life or anything else going on?
You know what? So even transitioning from, like, I've been on several projects and now I'm back into consulting, but I said, so coaching and consulting. And so I just said that I would never do it again. Like, I would always follow, especially after my divorce, I said that I would always first follow my gut. You know what I mean? Just really be intentional about what I want first and, like, what feels right and aligned for me. And then go from there and accepting what comes with that. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's, you know, no one agrees.
Right.
And so to answer your question, I'm just, the work that I do, it just has to align with everything else that's going on in my life. And even, like, the activities that my kids participate in or that I participate, anything, it just has to align with where I am. And I still use my rooting words all the time. So now it's like I'm moving into this space where, like, it's just like this awakening that I think is happening across the globe. Just so my new words are, like, wild and free and authentic. And so so I'm gonna answer your question. I hope I answered that. So just being rooted to those things. And so, like,
Yeah. That makes sense. It's basically shifted how you make decisions in your life.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. The decisions that I make are very much about being healthy and at peace and aligned. Yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone about removing blocks? As far as if they feeling stuck, well, you said you're not really stuck. Let's start there.
Right.
You're not stuck.
Yeah.
You just haven't made the choice. But yeah, so what advice would you give to anyone that feels like I know I have things that are stopping me or that are blocking me. How do I let that go?
You want to know something? So not to get too woo-woo and heady.
I'm all about that. Go ahead.
So,
I call y'all my woo-woo girls.
you know I love a woo-woo.
I like a woo.
So
go for it.
You know, I think I remember when I was just very angry when I was going through my divorce. I was just mad, and I just could not find a way to not be mad anymore. I would go to the therapist, and they would say, well, this is what, and it was a very traditional, we went not knocking people who love religious therapists. Like, it was through the church that his mom recommended.
So like church counseling.
It was like church counseling. Yeah, church counseling. So we went, and he was just telling me like the things that I didn't do that led to his behavior and the things that, and I was like, and I was just so mad. I was angry, and I was like, so he doesn't have to take responsibility. And then he was saying the same thing, that she doesn't have to take responsibility. Like, you're saying that we're in this place because of what, and like it was so much more than that. Right. And so I remember I said, I just need to find someone. I need someone who can walk me through this process. And I went to a spiritual I went through the person that became my spiritual teacher. And I walked in, and she was like, oh. And I describe her as like, she reminds me of like, if you think of ancient times, like probably like a gypsy that sat in the middle of the square. That's how she, like, that's her energy.
I'm gonna need her card.
I love her. I recommend everyone. So I remember I went to her, and she was like, oh. And I was like, okay. And she was like, so what brings you here? And I was like, I'm just so mad. And I was like, I tried to meditate. I can't get it out of my head. I went to a hypnotherapist to see if she could teach me how to like quiet my mind. And it worked for a minute, but I just need something that could,
cleanse
me. And so she was like, so there's some trauma in your hips. And I was like, oh yeah, I just had a baby. She's 8 weeks old. She was like, no. She was like, there's some level of like family history there that's like keeping you like stuck where you're at, and like it's carrying over from like your grandmother to your mother to you. So hold that, put a pin in that piece. And then so she was like, so let's try to clean up that energy that's circling around your family. And she was like, because like you'll continue to carry that through to your daughters and things like that. And so to answer your question, I think there is a level that we just carry in our, like, from generation to generation, that we just, like, from, wherever we come from in the world, like, whatever was happening during that time, like, we carry that through to our children and to our children's children. So there's that piece that you just can't quite put your finger on. Like, no matter what, that I would have never have understood. And I kind of didn't even believe her during that time. I just had a baby. Like, I had a C-section. That's the trauma that you're seeing. But a lot of women carry their fear and their pain, especially women in leadership, and their emotions in their hips. And so there's that piece. And so I really didn't believe her until I went to someone else who was teaching me like the mechanics and the technical pieces of the work that I do now. She was like, oh, a lot of clearing and cleaning has happened. Like, who have you been working with? And I was like, oh, she is good. Like, you see that? And she was like, yeah, like you can definitely see that there's some work and some movement that has happened. I was like, wow, okay. And so I said, there's something there. Like, there's something there. I never would have understood that piece. So there's that. Then there is the piece where, like, a lot of the times it's us not making the decision. We're afraid to make the wrong decision. We're afraid to really be in our power. And I hate to sound cliche about that, but if we can, sometimes it's easier for us to say, well, tell me what to do, and I can just blame. If it doesn't go well, I can blame it on somebody else. I can put it on, well, you told me, and you said it worked for you, and you know what I mean? And so I think that there's a piece of it that says, okay, I feel stuck in this moment. What is the right action to take for me? Mine was going to find somebody to help me.
Yeah.
That is making, do something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's something. And even if it is, like, you don't know what to do, say that.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, great. I don't know what to do.
Right.
Acknowledge that.
Right.
And then say, well, who does? Who can I look for
Right.
help? And then, like, the universe will rise up and give you what you need. Like,
Right.
what you can't do for yourself, God and the universe will provide.
Absolutely.
You know, that space.
Right.
And so I think there's that piece. So when you are feeling stuck, like, make a decision. Like, listen for
Make
it.
something, yeah.
And do, like, listen for
Something.
what that is. And you'll, like, if you get in, like, I say this all the time, like, getting into your body, we've been told so much to not trust our feelings, don't trust your gut,
Right.
like, they're fleeting. Yes, they come and go because we're human beings,
Right.
But they're telling you something.
Right.
And so if you really get into your body and say, does that feel like a yes? Does that feel
Right.
like a no? Like, is something feeling off? Like, that's giving you some data
Yes.
for you to use.
There's a sign.
There's a sign there. And then it's just choosing. And some of it's like, universe, God, help me.
Right.
Help me.
Right.
Like, give me something.
Yeah.
And then listening for what that is. And it just might be so simple as go to the grocery store and go buy
Right.
some milk.
Right.
And then the answer will come as you reach. And someone is saying, excuse me. And they're saying, well, what is it that you do?
Yeah.
Oh. You know what I mean? Like, the littlest things can happen in, like, the most odd
Absolutely.
spaces.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on, you said that you like to talk about the getting into your body and and I know Elisa talks about that a lot, especially when it comes to trauma. So what do you think are ways that people can get more in tune with their bodies to understand and to listen and actually understand what's happening?
Yeah, so I like to start, especially with people that are not, that have had trauma. That's not, I like to refer them out because that's not my area of
Right.
expertise. But I think a really easy way is to start by saying, what does yes feel like? And I do this exercise a lot. So closing your eyes, asking yourself a question, or having someone else ask you a question and hearing what a yes, like, see what a yes, that sensation feels like in your body, right? And so where do you feel the yes? Do you feeling it like in your head? Are you feeling it in your chest? Are you feeling it in your gut? Like, are you feeling tingles in your fingers? So where does that yes feel? And then doing the same thing for a no. And you can do it on easy things like, should I take 610 or I-10? We're in Houston. I'm going to eat fries. Should I eat fries? Yes or no? Like, really sensing that and like getting into the practice of what the yes and no feels like, and then going from there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And then trying it out. Trying something out, and if it doesn't go well, okay, what was the lesson? Like, get into your body, feel that. What is that I needed to learn? And then seeing, like, where it registers it, like, is it expansive? Does it feel restrictive? Or do you feel like, oh, you know what, it felt good though. Yeah, that feels good. Like, that feels released. It feels soft. Or do you feel yourself, like, clenching up?
Right.
Are your cheeks, like, are you clenching your jaws?
Right.
Or do you feel tension in your chest?
Yeah.
Like, really, like, listening for when you say something or do something, and then pausing, even for a second, and saying, okay, how does that feel?
Right.
And then
You're so right. And we're so disconnected from our bodies. I think especially women, where we get the message really early on that our bodies are not essentially for us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They're to serve
Yes.
the purpose of serving others and for others to sort of, our body doesn't belong to us. And so we get so disconnected from it. And, you know, I think even in relationships or getting to know people, like, I tell people that all the time, like, see how you feel around a certain person. And it's so important to teach our children that, right? Like, because children are so good at that just instinctually, right? It's kind of like we are programmed to not trust them. Right? It's our instinct. And kids will tell you when they don't like somebody. Or they don't like, I don't like, you know when they don't like that person. Or they don't feel comfortable, but it's that conditioning of, be nice. Don't be rude. You know. So I love that. Even just in the idea of making those decisions for yourself.
I wonder if that's. I'm thinking about what you said about kids and just like when we ask like why, well, give me a reason, as opposed to like I may not have the words to even explain why. I just know it doesn't feel right.
It just doesn't feel good.
And teaching them that's okay.
That is okay, especially around other people. I think especially like if somebody makes you uncomfortable or if you just, and sometimes it may not be that the other person is malicious or has bad intent. Something's off. Trust that. You
Right.
know, trust it, and,
Yeah.
and reinforcing that with them.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing for some people, especially with children.
Mhm.
Like my youngest daughter, she said no thank you. Oh, come here. And I'm like, she said no thank you.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right.
and like her, like, and she feels power in that.
Yeah.
Like when
Yes.
she sees that, like me and her dad have her back in that decision. She's
Absolutely.
like she's like, yeah,
Yes.
I said no.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I
Yes.
said no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
awesome. That's really
I
awesome.
love that.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite book or resource? I mean, first tell us
Ooh.
all of your books. And then,
Yes.
and then tell us what's another favorite book or resource that you have.
You know what? So I wrote my very first book was called Chasing 31, and it was this person that I wanted to be. And at the time, I felt so contained, and this lady was like all the things that I wanted. Like this person that was like inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I wrote the like little pamphlet guide, Shift,
Mhm.
that I'm really proud of. I am proud of
Yeah.
that piece. I think it's packed with good, like valuable content from end to end.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that.
Mhm.
And then I'm working on my next book. Is called The Beauty of Becoming.
Love that.
So I'm very excited about that piece, and it's about who you become through the manifestation process. So not the manifestation process itself, but those things that you have to really rely on, like faith
Mhm.
and letting things go, and like who you become, like as you're going through those steps of like calling in these things that you want. So that's the one I'm working on now.
awesome.
I
Yeah.
love that.
That's so
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you.
I love
Thank
that.
you.
It's that, you know, like you said, we don't want to be cliche, but you hear it all the time. That journey, right? But
Yeah.
the path to get there. We
Mhm.
get so hyper focused on the arrival.
Yeah.
But what was it getting there?
That
Yeah,
got you
what
there,
you got
yeah.
you there, yeah. And then
Yeah.
you can do it all, you do it over and over again. It's like,
And that's the hard
That's
part.
the
to
hard
love.
part,
The
yeah.
process, you know, we talk about that. I'm like, I don't like the
I
process.
just want to be there.
The
And we
process
just-
sucks.
yeah, let's just get there. But
Yeah.
you know, my favorite, again, I'm very woo-woo. So I love Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Yes.
I am a student and a teacher of the metaphysical text, A Course in Miracles. So I love A Course in Miracles as a just a tool.
You're a course instructor for that? Did you say?
A teacher,
Oh,
so yeah, so
wow, okay.
I haven't
Announced
so,
it
yeah,
yet?
announced it yet. But there we go.
Right.
So that I love both of those books. I return to Love all the time by Marianne Williamson. And I use things like you said tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I use crystals quite a bit. I'll use oracle cards quite a bit. And then prayer and meditation. Yeah.
Awesome. So what makes you dope?
Ooh.
This has become like my favorite question.
You want to know something? Like, I think I moved into this sweet spot of like this practical magic. You know what I mean? Like, I really enjoy that. Like, it's not too far left and it's not too far right. That like I'm able to incorporate like these very ancient spiritual tools in the day to day, to where it's not like I wear my
I know,
rose
'cause
quartz
I
on my
love
hand.
that,
Thank
yeah.
you. I just wear it to remind me of love. Like I don't, yes, you can set up an altar, and yes, you can have a place where you go and pray and meditate. But I'm really proud of this space that I've come to, where it's like, yeah, just incorporating every day, magic into.
I love that.
Yeah.
Practical magic.
Yeah, practical
I love
magic.
that. That
Yeah.
should be your next book too.
Practical magic. That's it.
That's the how-to
Y'all,
guide.
that's how
Okay.
to guide. There we go. Done.
So how do you feel like you are changing the mental health game, mental health wellness for minority communities?
I think building what I just said is like, I think that we're moving into a space where we're having the conversation, and I just talk about it. I
Right.
talk about it openly. It doesn't, and not making it like, okay, guys, let's set time aside. Like, let's move over here. And there's a time and space for that. But just incorporating it in my day-to-day language and like how I live. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so to the point of this, like my rose quartz, it's a conversations piece. You know what I mean?
Right.
And saying, hey, well, what is that about? Well, you know what? When I was going through my divorce, a part of the healing process, and in addition to having a therapist, I also had you know what I mean? And just openly having a conversation. And then also, I think also when I'm having conversations with my clients, I say, this is where I stop. And then this is where I think you can move into a therapist or someone who's a lot more experienced. That's a really good resource.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like building a team, building an ecosystem. Just around this space.
Right.
I love that because it speaks to what Ebony said earlier about there's so many different modalities to healing. And I think as therapists also, it's important for us to also acknowledge the importance and the benefits of working outside of what we do. Right?
Yeah,
like we can't limit ourselves to think therapy is the only way.
Right.
Because people need more than just that. They they want to be able to implement some of their spiritual beliefs, some of their whatever that maybe it is more limited in a therapy session.
Right.
So having this network of all types of healers and modalities of healing is so important.
Yeah, because that's super important for me. I know when I talk about people and their body work, and we get to a place where they're talking about trauma, I'm very clear on, hey, I really think that this is a great opportunity for you to call on some of these resources and therapists who are really, really, really they're vets in this process. Like they know it, and I just can't say that enough. I think it's irresponsible of us as especially if you're a coach or new and you're trying to take it on to show that you can do it. It's not It's not the way.
It's no longer for the client. It's
about you.
Ego.
Exactly. It's about your ego.
Right.
And so
I have one more question, but I just want to acknowledge what you said about why you're dope and how you're changing the face of the game. We had lunch a month ago, whatever, and I felt like it was.
Well, am I gonna cry?
I'm trying not to make you cry. No, but it's one of those things where when it just comes out of you, right? It's not I do this for work. It's this is who I am. And so just in casual conversation, so much came from that hour and a half, however long we sat there and talked, which clearly you've seen changes in me, and a lot of that came from that one conversation that we had, just because you are very genuine, and this is my space, and this is where I am, and this is how I got here, and maybe you should think about those things, maybe not, and it is what it is, but it wasn't and it wasn't even a coaching session, but it was just a conversation, but it's clear that you're genuinely being you, and that impacts other people a lot, and so
thank you
that's
for
all.
saying that.
You get it? Okay. All right.
Thank you for saying that.
No, you're very welcome. And as I make more changes, I will keep you updated. So why do you think therapy is dope? Because you said you refer to therapists, and clearly you've done some therapy before. Why is therapy dope?
I just think having that, I think it's a sacred space. I just think having that sacred space where someone is locked into you for a particular amount of time, it's important.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's I think our need is to be seen and be heard. And those are so important to us, and to have that sacred space where, paying for it or not, where you are seen and heard on something that is very personal and sensitive to you, and often that we brush over.
Right.
I think it's so important. I think that's dope to have just that type of attention where you can be seen and you can be heard.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Especially when it's good.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you so much.
Oh, I appreciate y'all. Y'all are so great. I'm a fan.
Tell everyone how they find you.
Oh, yeah. So you can find me on all social media channels at Quiana Larae. So QUIANA LARAE. And then my website is QuianaLarae.com.
Okay. Love it. And we'll, of course, have all that in the show notes.
Thank you.
We so appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for being here. Y'all can follow us across social media at Melanin and Mental Health, Melanin Health on Twitter. MelaninandMentalHealth.com is where you go for the directory, the podcast, merchandise, all those things. Check us out. We have lots of things coming up. Of course, on our social media, we always try to post and keep you up to date. And also, if you are a mental health professional, join the Melanin and Mental Health Professionals group on Facebook.
And this Saturday, we are going to be at the Black
We
Heritage
forgot about
Festival.
that. Completely forgot. We are speaking
Yes,
at the Black Heritage Festival.
Yeah, we're going to be on a panel this Saturday. 4? What time was it?
I think it's at 4.
I think it's like around 4. But that's going to be a great event.
And then the following Saturday, we're speaking
going to be at the Glittered in Goals event. So we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up.
Yes. So thank you, as always, for your support, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.